The Elves and the Shoemaker. Long ago, in a quiet town nestled between rolling hills and cobbled lanes, there lived a humble shoemaker and his kind-hearted wife. Their little workshop stood at the corner of a winding street, its windows always fogged with warmth, and the scent of leather and polish floating through the air. The shoemaker was once known for his fine craftsmanship. Each stitch he made was neat and true, and the shoes he created cradled the feet like no other. But as time passed, business grew slow. The people of the town began buying cheaper shoes from merchants who sold them in bulk, and the shoemaker found himself selling less and less. Despite this, he never cut corners in his work, nor did he let bitterness into his heart. He and his wife, though poor, remained gentle and generous, often giving what little they could spare to those even less fortunate. One chilly winter evening, the shoemaker looked at his dwindling supplies. All he had left was just enough leather to make a single pair of shoes. "Well," he said to his wife, gently brushing her hand, "I will cut the pieces for the shoes tonight, and tomorrow I shall rise early to sew them together." His wife smiled warmly, though worry flickered behind her eyes. She prepared a small supper of bread and broth, and afterward, they said their prayers and went to bed, the cut leather lying neatly on the workbench under the soft glow of the candlelight. The night grew deep and silent. Snowflakes whispered against the windows, and the moon cast silver shadows on the floor. But something strange happened in that quiet hour. When dawn broke and sunlight filtered through the frosty glass, the shoemaker rose and went to his bench, and there, to his utter astonishment, stood a pair of shoes. Not just any shoes, but the finest he had ever seen. The stitching was flawless. The shape was perfect. The leather shone as if kissed by the morning light. He turned them over in his hands in disbelief. "Wife," he called out, "come quickly." She rushed in, eyes widening in wonder. "Why, did you work in the night?" "No," he said slowly. "I left the pieces here just as you saw them. Something, has finished them for me." The mystery deepened when, that very morning, a well-dressed gentleman passed by and spotted the shoes in the window. He came in, tried them on, and found they fit him perfectly. Overjoyed, he paid the shoemaker far more than the usual price and left, smiling. With the money, the shoemaker bought enough leather for 2 pairs of shoes. That night, as before, he cut the leather and laid it out. Again, he and his wife went to bed, puzzled but hopeful. Morning came, and once again the shoes were done. 2 pairs now, each more splendid than the last. And as before, they sold quickly, bringing even more money. Night after night, the same miracle occurred. The shoemaker would prepare the pieces, and in the morning, they would be transformed into magnificent shoes. Word spread, and customers came from far and wide. Soon, the shoemaker and his wife were no longer poor. Their home was warm, their table filled, and joy returned to their days. Yet curiosity stirred in their hearts. Who are these mysterious helpers? The wife wondered aloud one evening. Let us hide and watch tonight. So they lit no lamps that night, nor did they lie down to sleep. Instead, they tucked themselves quietly behind a curtain and waited. Midnight passed. Then, just as the moon reached its peak in the sky, the workshop door creaked open. In danced two tiny figures no taller than a child's boot. They were elves, mischievous and sprightly, with bright eyes and nimble fingers. They wore no clothes, only scraps and rags, and their feet were bare despite the cold. They leapt onto the workbench and began to work with astonishing speed and grace. They sewed and hammered, cut and stitched, working together in perfect harmony. In no time, the shoes were complete, shining like treasures in the dim light. And as suddenly as they had come, the elves vanished into the night. The shoemaker and his wife stared at each other, hearts brimming with awe and gratitude. "They have helped us so much," the wife whispered. "We must do something in return." So the next day she set to work with needle and thread. She made two tiny shirts, two pairs of trousers, tiny socks, and warm cloaks lined with fur. The shoemaker made two perfect little pairs of leather shoes. They placed the gifts on the bench that night instead of the usual cut leather. Then they hid once more behind the curtain. When the clock struck midnight, the elves appeared as before. But when they saw the tiny clothes and shoes, they stopped in delight. They slipped into the garments with giggles and claps, twirling and dancing in their new outfits. "Now we are fine little gentlemen," one elf squeaked joyfully. "And we needn't work any more," said the other. With laughter and light steps, they danced around the room and out the door, never to return. Though the shoemaker never saw the elves again, he and his wife never forgot them. They continued to prosper, their shop becoming known for the finest shoes in all the land. But they also remembered to be kind, generous, and humble, just as they had been in their days of struggle. And so, in that quiet town where the snow once fell thick and the shoes once stitched themselves in silence, the tale of the elves lived on, whispered through generations, of magic, kindness, and gratitude for help freely given.